Gather round, children, I'll make you some cookies.
Now, who doesn't love Grandma's house? Well, depending on who your grandma was as a person, potentially lots of people. But who doesn't love the comforting charm of freshly baked cookies, doilies draped over antique furniture, and the soft purr of a cat? Welcome to the world of Grandmacore, an aesthetic that got me in a chokehold and wouldn't let go. Grandmacore embraces the charm and simplicity of our grandmothers' lifestyles, embracing vintage pieces and homemade goods, all wrapped up in a warm, cosy, inviting space. Essentially, it's a nostalgic nod to the past, celebrating a more homey, slower-paced lifestyle that our grandmas may have lived. And yes, before you say it, herein lies the problem of aesthetics, a rose-tinted envisioning of how our grandparents might have lived. But due to that pesky nostalgia, which, as we know, uses imagination to fabricate past events, we don't actually know how accurate our envisionings are. And do feel free to go and check out my video on nostalgia for more of that. And so for now, it's all wrapped up in rocking chairs and embroidery. And what's crazy is that my own grandmother, who we'll call Nana because grandmother is just not her thing, isn't a white fluffy-haired lady floating around in flowery dresses. I mean, don't get me wrong, she did pass the school for grandmas with flying colours, with baking, knitting and cat ownership, sometimes multiple, but her overall look is very modern. She's a fashionista, and if you walked into her home, you wouldn't see a piece of antique furniture in sight. No, my love for this look, I have nobody else to blame but my mother. My mum has always been into pre-loved furniture, mainly out of necessity, and so when I grew up I was surrounded by beautiful old mahogany and feminine touches because my mum raised me alone. And then as I got older, I started to find that my love for antiques was growing and I wanted to live a sort of modern day Beatrix Potter lifestyle. And boom, I was part of the movement. And if you want to be part of it too, then listen up, because I'm going to help you. Well, first of all, Grandmacore centres on your home life, so let's start there, by peppering your home with antique furniture. Now, these do not need to be valuable or museum quality, but more pre-loved, slightly worn items that have a sense of history and a unique character. Lived in, that's the overall theme. Now, an animal companion will really add a bit of nice seasoning, and preferably a cat, but if you happen to be allergic, then whimsical cat knickknacks will do just as well. Doilies and anything craft-based and lots of different layers and textures always work well, and for the sound of your home, we want old vinyl records, old-timey music. Gentle, calm, peaceful, slow. Now, the kitchen tends to be pivotal in this aesthetic, and we want mismatch lining your Welsh dresser shelves. Wow, Welsh dresser, there's a tongue twister for you. Welsh dresser shelves, Welsh dresser dough. And of course mason jars filled with homemade jams and preserves. Now for the bedroom, soft ambient lighting, eider downs and a vintage vanity table filled with antique jewellery. And don't forget nature elements, houseplants, fresh flowers and a herb garden. Anything you can do to bring the outside inside. Again, nothing has to be valuable because with Grandmacore, the value comes from sentiment. Oh. And here's some things that you should avoid for this aesthetic. Modern minimalist decor, sleek, shiny and ultra-modern furniture. Anything marble top, a no-no as far as I'm concerned. Mass-produced art. Instead, try handmade or vintage pieces. Plastic and synthetic materials don't really go. We need more materials like wood, cotton, wool. Overly bright neon colours. Try to stick to a softer, more muted colour palette. Anything that's soothing and more comforting. And this one surprised me. Clutter. Now, while Grandmacore is all about coziness, it's not about clutter. So keep your space tidy and well organised. Now, I thought that I was an advocate for cluttercore, and in many ways I am, but really I'm a very well organised, tidy person, and I always think tidy space, tidy mind. So Grandmacore through and through, apparently. And as far as what you do in this aesthetic, this is when I knew I was doomed. Handmade crafts, gardening, reading, tea time, of course, someone get the Brown Betty. Bird watching, come on. Writing letters, antique shopping, listening to classical music, preserving and storytelling. I like all those things. So what about the Grandmacore wardrobe? And this is where you need to head over to your local charity shop. Believe me. Because we're looking for loose, flowy dresses, skirts, high-waisted trousers, and you need vintage-inspired patterns like floral, gingham or paisley. Basically, the more it looks like it could have been your grandmother's tablecloth, the better. And always pair everything with a nice chunky knit. And for shoes, loafers or lace-ups. And if you don't believe me, everything I'm wearing today, charity shop, including these. Add a vintage brooch and you're golden. And of course, a nice, sturdy, roomy handbag. And if it doesn't look like that Mary Poppins could have kept her lamp in there, it's not right. Better. So what's the difference between Grandmacore and cottagecore, I hear you ask? Well, cottagecore is about the romanticisation of rural living. It embodies the fantasy of a simpler life, away from the hustle and bustle of modernity, because we all love that. Grandmacore is less about pastoral and more about personal. It's centred around the warm, comforting feeling of your grandmother's home. Nostalgia, sentiment, empathy, all those things. But with every aesthetic comes problems, and sadly Grandmacore has a big one. Age discrimination. The hashtag Grandmacore has generated over 200 million views on TikTok, celebrating more matronly styles, sensible shoes, long skirts, and even fashion icons have started adopting these looks, like Bella Hadid and Emma Chamberlain. And high fashion hasn't been left out either, because in the Miu Miu's Fall 2023 runway show, they fully embraced the aesthetic. Notably, however, this older-inspired show featured only youthful, conventionally attractive models. Well, how about that? When you add this to trends like TikTok's aging filter, which has had over 10 billion views, people start to become panicked about getting older. And even the people who appear to be embracing it, that's only because they can take the filter away again. And now the anti-aging market is estimated to be worth approximately $85 billion and is steadily growing. And the same attitude is visible on the runways, where age diversity is notably lacking. As a woman, I am sometimes terrified about getting older, because even if celebrities cannot escape the judgment and chastisement of something as natural as aging, a couple of examples that spring to mind recently are Emilia Clarke and Julia Roberts, then what hope do I have? And the problem is, with trends like Grandmacore, we're celebrating an elderly aesthetic without the actual elderly people, proving once again that if something doesn't happen to you whilst you're in your 20s, does it even really matter? So even though the trend has the effect of bringing elements of elderly style to the forefront of fashion, it leaves a lot of elderly people out and inadvertently perpetuates the notion that all grandmothers have the same style, which I've already proved is absolutely not true. Every grandma is different. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. So please do enjoy this aesthetic, but rather than pinning it to a certain bracket of people, let's use Grandmacore to evoke those feelings of warmth, familiarity, nostalgia that, let's face it, we're all desperate to feel. And in an attempt to recapture those feelings and bring back a more slow, contented pace of life, which seems to be slowly slipping away in our modern, fast-paced world, let's not forget the elderly people who are in the modern world and, since social media, need to be seen more than ever.